Welcome to the Blue Yonder Overland podcast. I'm your main host, Jen, and I'm so excited to welcome you to our 13th episode today. We are all about empowering and inspiring you to get more adventures outside, however that looks for you, but especially to make overlanding more approachable. I've been having such a fun time making this podcast and starting to have really interesting conversations with people that I meet along the way. If you have any ideas for topics that you'd like us to cover or questions about things that we've covered, please feel free to reach out at Blue Yonder Jen on Instagram or Threads with those ideas or feedback. I'd love to hear it and keep improving. And today we're excited to dig into the topic of recovery, getting yourself out of situations where you might have gotten in a little over your head, which I think we can all relate to, whether overlanding or just in life. Welcome back. I'm your main host, Jen, and I'm here with my husband, Matt, today.
Hey, everyone.
We're sipping our morning coffee together, and we are thinking about recovery today. So, extricating yourself from dicey situations you may find while out adventuring on trails, as well as helping out other people that you may come across who need a little hand getting out of sticky situations. And when I was thinking about all of this, obviously there's a bunch of gear we can discuss, which we'll get to, but I was interested to start the conversation a little bit talking about sort of the mindset, because I think within the overlanding community, there is certainly this mindset of self-sufficient travel and the expectation that you are bringing everything with you you're going to need to successfully complete whatever route you've got planned. And so there's an emphasis on acquiring the skills, acquiring the gear that you're going to need to do this. At the same time, the community is very helpful. And if you run into people out on the road, everybody, if we see somebody pulled over on the side, we'll always kind of slow down, roll a window down, ask if everything's okay, or wait for a wave or a thumbs up before proceeding. So you'll definitely find folks that are eager to help out if you see somebody in need. But at the same time, there's sort of a point of pride, I think, in coming prepared.
Yes, that's definitely the case. You want to be able to get out and take care of yourself. If you get it stuck, be able to get out, not just because you don't know exactly when or who's going to come by and what their capabilities are. So you don't want to end up waiting, but you also just, that sense of pride.
Yeah. Well, and it's also really getting technical about things, also kind of a liability thing too, where it's just, even if somebody comes along and thinks they can help you out, then you're putting your trust in a total stranger, and maybe they know how to use their recovery gear and tools great, but maybe they don't know your vehicle or your setup. And so being reliant on their expertise is always a gamble too. And I know for me, well, you too, for sure, I think we probably err on the side of we would rather learn to take care of ourselves. Yep. It's hard for me to trust people, actually. So I have a really tough time in the situations. If I were to get in a situation and have to rely on strangers for help, I'd have a very tough time.
Yes. Especially, it goes beyond just what they might do to your vehicle, but what your vehicle might do to theirs.
Right.
It reminds me. Yeah, it reminds me of a story of we had some friends who they took their Ford Explorer up to a spot during the summer. It would be no problem getting to, but it was winter. There was some high level snow still, hadn't fully thawed out or melted. And they got stuck, and the first person that came by to pull them out ended up breaking their vehicle in the process of recovering.
Oh, no.
And I don't remember exactly what happened to their vehicle, but it took then the next person to come up to pull not only the vehicle that recovered them, but their vehicle out. And everyone got home, and it was fine. And the person who broke their vehicle recovering was like, hey, this is not your fault, anything like that. It's because of XYZ. But, that's not always going to be the case. And so, yeah, I feel just much better knowing that if we get out there, we have the stuff and the knowledge to at least get ourselves out of easy to moderate situations. Like there's some, if we get truly stuck, might not be able to get out, but easy to moderate definitely can by ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny because the more you get into overlanding, the more you go, the farther you go, I think it's only natural that you are going to want to push against your limitations. And so trails or roads that we might have been on earlier in our journeys where we would say, oh, I'm not sure we can do this, like, let's turn around. I think the longer you go into overlanding and dispersed camping, the more motivated you are to either learn the skills or acquire the gear to allow yourself to do those things, so that there's just fewer times where you have to say, well, I'm not sure our vehicle or our setup can handle that, or I don't know if I could get us out if we got stuck. Let's turn around. It's just sort of, I think, natural, like human exploration to just want to be able to go farther and want to push your limits and be like, oh, if we just had this, a winch, or if we just had this, then I'd feel really comfortable going through this because I know I could get us out even if we got stuck.
Yeah. There's a mentality that every time you turn around, you just naturally assume the most amazing spot that you've ever been to is going to be at the end of the road that you just turned around. And it's really hard to make that decision to turn around, although oftentimes it's the correct decision. You just know you're going to find the best spot in the world right at the end of that road, even though that's probably not true.
Yeah, but it's easy to think that. And yeah, I have heard so many stories from people, the more people I talk to within the overlanding community, and the stories about things that have gone wrong, and how whenever that has happened, it always spurs them towards wanting to learn more or upskill or up-level their gear so that the next time around, that won't be the thing that derails their trip or that stops them. So I think that's a fairly universal feeling across the overlanding community.
Definitely.
But of course, it's also influenced by risk tolerance. And so everyone's got a different appetite for what sort of risks they're willing to take. And I think also the more often you go, the more comfortable you'll be with whatever your regular vehicle is and your setup.
Yeah. Risk tolerance really comes down to two pieces: understanding your vehicle's skill sets and having knowledge about your turning radius and about your ground clearance and being able to make those judgments and things like that, knowing what capabilities you have as far as traction control and confidence that, at different air levels in the tires, I can do XYZ. I know how to navigate this challenge, this obstacle. And once I know the direction to point the truck, then I'm good. That level of knowledge decreases the risk or changes the risk calculation. But then there is also just the, is this worth it question? And that question and how you answer that question can be very different for different people.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're talking about with vehicles naturally segues into, I do want to discuss some of the must-have gear, but I think that conversation really starts with vehicle. We talked about in the beginning episodes of this podcast that you should just feel free to get started with whatever you have, and don't be limited if you don't have a super off-road capable vehicle. You could still find places that are accessible. That being said, obviously a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive vehicle is going to allow you to go farther. But on top of that, then there's also either certain vehicles or vehicle features that are really designed for off-roading and allow you to go even farther. And so I'm thinking of your Tacoma pickup or Alex's Bronco Sport. Both have different modes that you can choose that came from the factory install. And those are things like rock crawler mode. I think she has like a sand mode. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think, when you look at vehicles' capabilities, there's some things that inherently make your vehicle far more capable. yes, 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, but having 4 low makes a big difference. There's a lot of times where 4 high, you'll be stuck, and 4 low, it'll be like, what are you talking about? This is fine. Then there's even going above and beyond that, there's different sort of automated vehicle control settings like you were talking about. In the Tacoma, there's multi-terrain support and there's crawl control. So, when you're in multi-terrain support, it's adjusting the power profile when you hit the gas pedal, all that to moderate general traction and other features. I don't know exactly how it works. When you're in crawl control, it takes over it for you. You don't hit anything. It runs the accelerator and the brake for you. You set your speed with a knob, and it does a really good job avoiding the 2 things that are going to get you stuck, which is too much brake and too much gas.
Yeah.
So
and we actually use that. I would say, though, with all these features, they can be the best features in the world, but they don't mean a thing if you haven't actually practiced using them. And so if you're afraid to use them or not sure how they're going to work, don't wait until there's a situation where you have to use them for the first time to experiment with them.
Yes, especially your partner and crawl control. It makes a heck of a lot of noise and can be kind of scary sounding.
Yes, the first time we used this, I was convinced that we were going to die.
So, yeah, definitely, it's like when you move to a snowy or icy area for the first time, practicing driving in those conditions in a safe spot. It's similar to that. And then also make the shift to these modes before you have to.
Yes.
When I think it was early in my time, I watched a decent amount of the Expedition Overland videos, and they were going through Alaska. And one of the things that stuck with me was oftentimes they would just prep for the situation that was a half mile down the road or 2 miles down the road, like whether it's letting out the winch cable and sort of tying it up in a different spot or getting into 4 low or that. And we do that all the time. I spend a lot more time in 4 low than I have to, just as sort of a just in case.
Yeah. Or with aired down tires.
Aired down tires is definitely the other one. And that's one I think we'll talk later on about different pressures.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, make those decisions before you have to, because chances are if you're stuck, you're in an awkward spot. It's not going to be great to go around the tire or the vehicle. You might be in a situation where the drivetrain's under tension. And so making those shifts or changes to the suspension or the drive profile is not doable or is hard on the vehicle. I mean, save yourself some headache.
Yeah, you can't wait till you're halfway up or down a hill to make that shift. Yeah. And that's where, too, don't be afraid to get out and walk and scout sections, too. We've definitely done that. Try to figure out what the least sketchy way of approaching an obstacle is.
Yes. Overlanding can be slow, not just because you're driving slow, but because it's a good idea to stop and look and talk through things.
And that's where things like lights can come in handy. I wasn't even going to talk about lights because they're not what I would necessarily consider recovery gear, but actually they could be very helpful depending on the time of day you're doing your recovery, but also really helpful for avoiding situations where you might need to be recovered is having good lights.
Yes.
And so what does that mean beyond just your standard vehicle headlights?
Yeah, this is one area where our setup isn't great, and I've always thought about making these upgrades. Ditch lights and really good backup lights. We do have good backup lights, but when you have ditch lights, so one of the easiest ways...
Where are those installed?
So those are installed either at the area where the hood meets the windshield or in your rack, and they're angled down and to the side. And so they're giving you a really wide view, and they're really focused close to the vehicle so that you can see or identify where the ditch on the road is.
Okay.
It's really helpful in snow where it's not as obvious and it is almost impossible, or it's not impossible, but it is really hard to self-recover from a ditch in the snow. And so identifying that ditch before you get there, especially when you're forced to back out.
Ooh,
it's really the combination of reversing and visibility that gets you in trouble.
Yeah. But even the lights we do have, we found those incredibly helpful for scouting like potholes or rough roads too.
Yes. A low placed light bar and good fog lights. Those fog lights have the wide angle view. They're almost as good as ditch lights. Ditch lights look farther back into the side. So whereas my fog lights work really well when I'm going forward, ditch lights work better when I'm backing up, scouting sites, stuff like that. But yeah, that low LED light bar, really good for seeing far forward, getting the shadows on the road.
Yeah.
So that you can see the, potholes and big divots, stuff like that might kind of hide themselves in certain light and definitely hide themselves at night. And then the fog lights for that wider view.
Cool. So discussed vehicle modes, and special drive features, lights. The next most obvious topic I think to talk about is just any sort of equipment that might help you with traction. So thinking about things like recovery boards, Max Tracks being the most obvious example of that, or a shovel, or chains for your tires if it's winter, but things that are going to help you get extra traction that you can either apply before or use after you've encountered a sticky situation.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the big ones. Traction boards. We have Max Tracks. There's a few good companies out there. This is one where I have seen and helped people recover. And actually my first set of traction boards were just sort of knockoff brand ones. One place to spend money, good traction boards. They make a huge difference. Beyond traction boards, traction boosting devices. So chains in the winter. And I actually throw air down equipment into this category.
Okay.
Being able to quickly air down, really useful. It's going to make you less opposed to airing down.
Yeah, that's true.
And
if it takes you less time to do it, you're more likely to do it.
Exactly. And that it is a decision. We still do it all the time where we'll drive out. I'll be like, oh, I don't want to go outside. And we won't air down. That's exactly what I sound like. Jen's laughing at me. And we won't. And then we'll drive 30 minutes. And why did we not at least air down a little bit here just to make the ride more comfortable? But there's airing down for ride comfort, but there's also airing down for traction. If you are going through snow or you're going through sand, going all the way down to 14 PSI. If I never go below 14 because I don't have bead lockers, but 14 for sand and snow. I'll do 18 pounds for mud. And then when we do just are going out, we're not exactly sure where we're going to hit. We're doing rocks and stuff like that. We want to be more comfortable. I hit 22 to 25 pounds and that seems to work. But being able to do that quickly is great. ARB makes a pretty good tool for that. And then we just shifted. I don't remember the brand, but they screw onto all four wheels and they just slowly let the air out. They have a little pressure sensor.
So you set it ahead of time and just go with it. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So then I think that naturally leads us to other discussions about tire, whether to help with getting good traction or repairing the tires. And we talked about some of this on one of the first couple episodes because a lot of this falls into that sort of basic equipment where it's really good if you're going off-roading at all to have with you. But we talked about having some sort of tire repair kit like bacon strips, not actually bacon. But I think it's funny that it's called that.
I'm a huge believer in on-trail tire repair versus on-trail wheel swap. I can repair a tire quicker, easier. I feel like it's safer for me. It's safer for the truck. So having the bacon strips, for sidewall repair, there's a product called Glue Tread. Just means that one, you're not immediately going and using that spare, and then you don't have any spare. And two, you don't have to get the vehicle as high off the ground. You're not pulling lug nuts off and then accidentally shearing something. You're just putting yourself in less trouble. I will do a tire repair with the tire on, just lift it off, find the spot, you sort of ream it out, you put the bacon strip in, you cut off the excess, and you're back, reinflate, and you're back on the road. Much, much easier.
And if you can do that, like you said, then you still have that spare tire in reserve, which is a comforting feeling if
Definitely.
if something goes wrong. Yeah.
I, with my risk tolerance, the moment I have to do a repair, that trip is sort of over for me. I will start finding my easier way out. But if you're doing something like a BDR, which is a country discovery route, thank you. That might be another 40 miles. Going back to the ex-Overland folks, they have on multiple occasions had flats multiple times. Sometimes it just happens. If you're going through, one of the areas I really want to go through is the National Monument in southern Idaho, something of the moon. I can't remember what it's called. Craters of the Moon. Thank you. That type of terrain is notoriously hard on tires. And so not all vehicles have 2 spares or 3 spares. Some people do carry more spares around, some of the more intense folks, but I don't. And so, repairing on the ways. And if you do a swap, repair the tire you're swapping, inflate it, have it be a spare again.
Good point. Okay. So tires, repairs, everything related to lowering and increasing the pressure on your tires, including air pumps.
I don't think we specifically talked about that, but if you're going to lower pressure in your tires, you need to be able to increase pressure in your tires. So having at least that small air compressor that you can, tie. It doesn't have to be built in, but having a good high volume air
the
compressor.
faster it goes also, then that probably plays into your calculus of how often to air up or down, because you won't want to wait around for more than half an hour to air up all of your tires again. Although you can kind of build that into your itinerary, like perhaps for stopping for breakfast or coffee while you finish airing up your tires. We've often made that.
Yep. Coffee while going around. We also have a sort of worst case scenario, low quantity battery powered thing. And so we use that on typically one tire, and then I get the other 3 tires done in the time that it takes one, but it saves us, 5-10 minutes. Makes me feel better about myself.
We love optimizing for efficiency.
Yes.
So it makes us happy to be able to save 5 minutes on the trip. Okay. So moving on from tires, then I think we're at that point, we're talking about slightly more heavy duty or serious recovery gear that you could opt into having.
I think the one thing on the easy stuff that we forgot to specifically call out is a shovel.
Oh, yeah.
Shovels really are an important part of traction boards. Yes, you will see in some soft environments, people on YouTube will show using their recovery tracks or traction boards as shovels. It sort of works, but a real shovel is going to do a much better job and is definitely worth the weight and money, whether that's just a small one from Home Depot or whether it's one of the more Overland specific collapsible good ones.
Such as? What's your favorite?
We have, I think it's DMOS is the brand. It's a good one. Ours is not, we use it in the winter. It's a flat front, but they do have a standard triangle front too, which has its purposes.
Yeah. And it collapses down really nice, flat profile, easy for packing.
Yep. And has a long telescoping arm. So one of the problems with the shorties is if you do have to get underneath the vehicle to sort of dig your traction board in, it could be difficult. You're in an awkward position.
Good point. Okay. So I think we've covered then tires, traction, shovels. Then we're starting to talk about more serious recovery gear, such as winches or tow lines, shackles, anything in that camp.
Yep.
So let's break some of those down.
Yeah.
What was the first one that you got?
Yeah, I would break it down. Let's put the winch in its own category. Especially, I really view winch as a recover other people, not a recover yourself. Yes, winches can absolutely recover yourself in situations.
Yeah.
But never trust the winch to be your sole source of extract. But in the recovering other people or helping other people recover you category, you have shackles, tow ropes, snatch straps, and kinetic ropes. Kinetic ropes and snatch straps, very similar. General concept is that the vehicle pulling you out can sort of get a running start and put tension on the device and therefore help pull you out.
Without breaking the rope.
A tow rope, very different. Don't use a tow rope like a snatch strap. Not meant to be, run forward and then pull and snatch you out. I think we now carry both just because we pulled someone out with a snatch strap and sort of towed them out with it. And
because that was all we had.
Yeah, it was all we had. And it wasn't an ideal experience.
Because?
Well, we made a few mistakes on that one. One, the length of the snatch strap is longer than a tow rope.
So once we got them out of their initial spot, it would have been really helpful to switch over.
Yeah, switch over something shorter. What ended up happening was we rolled down a slight downhill section. We didn't disconnect them for that downhill section. And they drove over a piece of our tow rope. They happened to have a dead alternator or snatch strap. Thank you. They had a dead alternator. Their brakes, they just had no ability to power their powered brakes. And so they weren't braking all that well. And so they rolled over our snatch strap, sort of wore it down when we had to replace it. But going back to the main point, I would always have 2 to 3 soft shackles and a snatch strap as the minimum. That's going to be what helps you get your vehicle. It helps another vehicle get your vehicle out. So no matter who's coming by, you have the ability to connect to their vehicle. You have the ability to connect to your vehicle, and you have the snatch strap, which will get you out of a tight spot. The reason I say 3 soft shackles, one, it could be a soft shackle or hard shackle. My preference is soft shackles. They store a lot easier. They're softer. They work just as well as a hard shackle. And if you are attaching to non-standard recovery points, which will be something I go into in a second, they don't damage anything. So I would love if anyone has thoughts on why a hard shackle is better. Please let us know, because I'm curious. But yeah, those the reason I say 3 is so if you do get in a towing situation, you have the ability to attach at multiple spots with that, going back to our sort of lesson learned.
Got it. So you could do like 2 spots on the vehicle being towed through 1 spot on the vehicle that is doing the towing.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
The one piece I will say as well is know your vehicle. So if you are going out in a standard, like nothing special, you might not have great specific recovery points, particularly ones strong enough for use of a snatch strap. For example, take like a Subaru Forester. On its front end, it does have a little thing that screws in to the front bumper. That's meant for towing, not kinetic recovery. You don't want to hook your snatch strap up there. You will want to find a spot on the frame to attach your soft shackle to that could then be pulled out. It will be a little awkward and a little weird, but that is better than pulling from one of those kinetics or one of those like tow spots.
Got it.
So
if you're only carrying a snatch strap though as your minimum piece of recovery, and you do have to use it as a tow line, is there anything you can do to
half the length and only be towed on uphills? Take the time to disconnect for each downhill and then reconnect once you can't drive. This is assuming you have to be towed out or you're towing out.
Yeah, or towing to the point where you could get other help. That was what we did in this situation we keep talking about, where we had to tow a small vehicle probably 8 miles or so to the point where they had cell service. But at that point, then we were only another mile to one of the main roads. And so we just towed them all the way to the edge of the Forest Service boundary so they could be on the main road and have cell service.
Yep.
Okay, so then I think the next category to discuss would be winches. We have much less familiarity with this, I would say, than the others, just because we haven't yet gotten a situation where we've had to use the winch. We have had a situation that prompted us to get the winch, which was dealing with the mud in northern Arizona while towing a trailer. So
yes, winch is definitely that next level up in capability. The ability to tie yourself and pull yourself up on a tree or another vehicle that's stationary, that's not positioned to drive, all sorts of things. It really adds to the capability. In the winch world, there's a lot of differences from winch to winch. What type of line do you have? Is it steel or synthetic? Whether you have a remote sort of actuator or not, stuff like that. Definitely one, if you're going down the winch route, watch some YouTube videos, how to do it. Make sure you understand your winch, pull it out, pull it back in, even if you're not doing anything. But yeah, the winch is your next level up in recovery.
Yeah. But probably a lot of, especially if you're just getting into overlanding or a more casual weekend overlander, you'll probably not encounter situations where you need it.
Yep.
For a long time.
I would say the big reason we got a winch, I mean, we talked about, we were in a situation where we had a lot of trouble self-recovering, and we did eventually self-recover, and we identified that this recovery would have been a lot easier. Self-recovery would have been easier with a winch. In my mindset, I really enjoy taking people out, and those people don't always have the best vehicles for it. And so knowing that with the winch, I can more easily recover other people in ways that's safer for their vehicle and safer for my vehicle and quicker, less stressful for both parties involved. That was the big reason we did it.
I like that. Yeah, we were constantly thinking, how do we get more friends and family out camping with us? And so doing everything we can to increase the chances that they could do it successfully, and then we could all get to where we wanted to go safely. So yeah, that's the other reason to start investing more in recovery gear.
Yeah. Can we take a step back real quick and talk traction boards?
Yes.
The one thing for traction boards versus 2 traction boards. Having 4 exponentially makes it easier to self-recover. 2 may or may not get you out. 4 is much more likely. When we talk about the situation where we got stuck, if we only had 2, no chance in the world we were getting ourselves out. Having 4 meant that it took some effort, and it took us multiple stabs at getting stuck to slowly make our way out, but we were able to. So going with that, and then just general use to make the traction board most effective, dig it under the stuck wheels. So that's where your shovel comes in. Put all 4 parallel to the direction you're driving out or in the direction you're driving out, and then slowly accelerate. This is a good spot where if you do have a crawl control mode on the vehicle, use the crawl control out so that you don't actually just shoot shoot the traction board back behind you.
Really good point on that. And like you say, it did take several slow steps to get unstuck. And so not getting discouraged, I guess, with any of these things. It may take multiple small steps and repositions of things like traction boards and the shovel to get you out of something. But usually, if you keep working at it, a series of repositions can get you out of most things.
Yep. And it's another place where having the shovel comes in, because you could prep the road not only under your vehicle to make the traction board effective, but in the direction that you're going to increase your likelihood that you're not going to get stuck and have to repeat the cycle.
Yeah. Okay. So that's, I think, a lot of the basic recovery I want to talk about. But I think there's sort of another category of stuff, which, depending on your vehicle and your setup, may become more or less important. Certainly, I think if you were overlanding on a motorcycle, it's probably even more top of mind. And that is thinking about things on your vehicle or with your setup that are most likely to break down. And if there's any small parts that you may just want to keep with you or keep stocked or know where you can find easily. So for us, one of those things ended up being fuses, with a lot of the different modifications with the electrical and lighting systems that you'd added to the Tacoma. It seemed like there was a couple times where we had a blown fuse that then impacted us. And so you just started carrying some.
Yep.
Small, easy to have, but knowing you had to know how to use them and how to replace them, but that really helped.
Yes. And it's funny, the biggest blower of our fuses was some cheap sort of USB to cigarette lighter or power slot. It loved popping those fuses. And that was, for some reason, a fuse that I didn't carry around all that much. But yeah, we learned, carry fuses, particularly with lights and external accessories. Those all will go into their own fuse box, and you can blow fuses. Or, I mean, we had a case where, knowing where we had an electrical issue with our light switch that went to it, and being able to just know where the fuse box was and pull the fuse so that I didn't keep accidentally turning on and off my lights during the day was, a nice thing to have. But carrying extra fuses, I am not the most vehicle mechanic-y person in the world. I don't, understand the mechanics of a CV joint or stuff like that. On-road repairs will give me some consternation. That being said, still carry around basic set of ratchets and wrenches and things, your sort of simple tools, just in case I have to jerry rig some sort of solution to get out of a tight spot. I can.
Yeah. Well, and I think that kind of takes us back full circle to the beginning, where a lot of it does come down to mindset and your own risk tolerance and sort of problem solving creatively, and being willing to consider multiple different ways to extricate yourself or to fix whatever problem you've got with your vehicle. And so then the more sort of basic tools you're giving yourself to work with, then the higher the odds you'll be able to figure something out. Or if you're within cell phone range, maybe you're able to do a YouTube or Google search for other ideas to solve your problem, because there's a lot of creative solutions out there.
Definitely. And I think that brings us to really the most important recovery tool is some sort of satellite communication, whether that's, it's becoming more of a thing on standard cell phones, but whether it's a Garmin InReach or a Bivy stick or something like that.
Yeah.
Have a way to communicate no matter where you are.
Yep. A way to be able to send your precise location to family or friends, or to be able to get them to send you help if needed.
Yep.
That would be the ultimate in recovery. So, with that being said, I think we'll leave it there for today. Thanks, Matt, for thinking through all those different categories of recovery and mindset. Any last words on this topic?
Don't let fear of getting stuck be what keeps you from getting out. It's not that bad.
Great thought. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Hi, friends. If you're looking for any of the links mentioned in this episode, I'll be posting those online at blueyonder-adventures.com. If you listened all the way to the end of this episode, thanks so much for your time today. And if you are curious to learn more about overlanding, I'd recommend going back to our first 2 episodes, which talk about what exactly it is, why we love it so much, and how to find great campsites. I'll also have plenty of other behind-the-scenes content, photos, footage, and references to other great people to follow over at Blue Yonder Jen on Instagram or Threads, so feel free to contact me there. And I'll be back next week with more.